This is Out of the Box with your host, Jonathan Clark. Out of the Box, Sunday nights at 9 on Q1043.
Okay, welcome back. His most recent full album is Changes, and there's also an EP of the Changes demos, which is also available. All the info, nealfrancismusic.com. His name is Neal Francis. He's from Chicago. Neal, how are you, man?
I'm doing good, Jonathan. Thanks for having me on.
You know, before we started this interview, because I followed you on Instagram, you just completely nailed a lot of people on April Fool's Day because you said you got a haircut, but clearly we are doing a Zoom. You did not get a haircut, so congratulations on the April Fool's prank, man.
Yeah, man, I'm keeping the hair rocking, you know.
Yeah, well,
like
there's
Samson
a pandemic, right? Like, why get a cut, right?
Yeah.
Well, Neal, I first heard your music because a friend of mine forwarded me a link, and he heard about it from Bob Lefsetz. He forwarded it to me and says, hey, you should probably check this out. And I got to tell you, man, I listen to a lot of music. You listen to a lot of music. People in the music business, this is what we do, you know. You're making it, I'm listening to it. But I got to tell you, man, for the first time in a long time, this Changes album, your 2019 album, was the first album, and I can't even remember when, that I had to keep listening to it. I mean, dude, that never happens to me. I had to keep listening and keep listening. I was dancing in my desk chair in my office at home where we've been broadcasting for the last year. And I'll tell you why I think I really latched onto it, because it has a sound. It has its own sound. It's your sound, but it's also the music that you make pressed a button inside of me that of all these bands and artists that I've loved over the years. You've heard this all before, but immediately coming to mind, Billy Preston, Dr. John, Leon Russell, the horns, your keyboards, the bass. It's all so damn funky. I can't think of a better word than funky. I know it's outdated, but it's funky. And I thought to myself when I heard it, is this a guy from the 70s, some obscure artist or something, like a Nick Drake or something who we never found out about until 20 years later, or something like that I just missed. And I did my research and I said, no, this guy's like barely 30 years old. He recorded the album in 2019 and you did it all on analog tape machines, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, man. That's how we get that sound.
Did you play all the instruments on this album as well, like aside from the drums, or did you do everything?
Oh no, man. So I played keys on the record, and right. I had my man PJ Howard on drums, and old time friend Mike Starr on bass, and then the producer Sergio Rios actually played guitar as well.
Oh, okay. Speaking of keyboards, you started playing piano like really early. I mean, like really early. Like, how old were you?
I was 3 or 4 when I started messing around.
What, like there was just a piano in the house and you started like banging on it and like making sounds or something? And
yeah, that's exactly how it started. Yeah.
But you really became a prodigy pretty quickly. Was this something that you could do like mostly by ear? I know you had classical training later on, but was it something that like you were able to pick up on pretty quickly?
Yeah, I relied on my ear quite heavily at the beginning.
And I heard this story about your parents were watching the movie The Sting, and you heard this music from Scott Joplin, which is in the soundtrack of the movie, and it really sort of infected you, right?
Oh yeah, man. I mean, that was one of my first obsessions was with ragtime as a result of that.
How could it not infect you, right? It's just so happy. It's like you just want to get up and start dancing. I mean,
it's really the basis for a lot of the popular music that followed. It led to jazz and blues and eventually rock and roll. And I think it's all the same sort of melting pot, of American music. It's particularly black music in America.
I'm wondering if you are a fan of Ken Burns. Did you ever watch country music or jazz from Ken Burns? Those great documentaries.
I watched segments of Ken Burns jazz, and That's actually how I found out that Clint Eastwood was a fan of like blues piano. So I've always fantasized about connecting with him on that. Maybe there's some time.
Yeah, right. No, he can play. Like he's like,
Yeah, he can play.
Didn't he do a movie on Coltrane, or was it? He did a movie, Forrest Whitaker, I believe, with it was either Coltrane or Charlie Parker. I can't remember which one, but it was really good. But yeah, Clint's like a huge jazz guy, and he can actually play the piano. But getting back to you, growing up in Chicago, such a history of the blues, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, how soon did that start to infiltrate your world?
Yeah, very early. A friend of the family came over and played some blues piano. And so I sort of got an idea that it existed. And then I was introduced to Otis Spann, and he played keyboards for Muddy for years. And then Pine Top Perkins, another pianist for Muddy Waters. And then, but really the Chicago as a center for music is so much more than blues too. You've got Curtis Mayfield and Ramsey Lewis, and the list goes on and on.
Smashing
Mercury
Pumpkins.
Records, sure, the Smashing Pumpkins later, but particularly the stuff that I was interested. Donny Hathaway came from Chicago, Phil Upchurch. There was just a great center of amazing music here. Mercury Records also was headquartered in Chicago at one point, and all the records were recorded here, and that major music industry doesn't exist here anymore to the same extent.
Well, I immediately think of Chicago and Chess Records, and
of course,
the Rolling Stones going there back in the day.
It was a mecca for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I think you got to play Lollapalooza now, unless you've played it already.
No, but it's on the books for this year. So
is it really?
God willing, it happens.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Is that what, July or something, or?
Well, I think it's scheduled. I think it's scheduled for later this year, maybe
right.
October. Maybe it's in August. I'm not sure, but it'll be the first time I'm going. So that'll be neat to actually play.
You got to get Perry Farrell on stage with you at some point.
Yeah, man. I'll have to have him sing some. Sing some of his
jazz versions of
yeah.
Jane's Addiction songs, and
yeah, I'm down with that.
But you were now. I'm assuming 2019. You did the record changes, and also there's this changes demo, which is all available right now. NealFrancisMusic.com. But I'm assuming you were all set to go out on the road when the pandemic hit, right?
Yeah, we had a pretty crazy year laid out for us. We're touring Europe twice, 2-month-long tours of Europe, and every major festival I can imagine, and here in the States, and then also a festival in Japan. So it was sort of like,
oh man,
just a Cinderella moment. And
would that have been your first time in Europe and or Japan?
I've been to Europe before, including to play with some blues acts back in the day, but this would be the first time under my own name. And
right,
Japan, I've never been there. I've always wanted to visit, so
I hear
very
it's
excited.
Just bananas in Tokyo, like it's a completely different world.
Yeah, of course, I can imagine that. I'm a big fan of their art and culture, and I'm really looking forward to getting there soon.
Well, tell me about this church that you are living in, or maybe you're not living there anymore, but you were for a while.
I'm sitting here now. Yeah,
you're sitting there in the church.
Yeah, so this is the parsonage of St. Peter's United Church of Christ in Chicago, and I just happened to end up here. Sort of had a rocky breakup, and I was.
We've all been there.
Yeah, right. I mean, everybody can relate to that, right? So. I was the music minister at this church, and I needed a place to live, and the pastor lived in the burbs with his family, and so this residence was vacant, and I asked if I could live here, and graciously they allowed me to live here. And so since October 2019, I've just been kind of in this church, and I built out a studio here, and the church is actually no longer functioning as a congregation just because of COVID
Right.
eliminated the last few congregants they had, and so
Do they have Zoom services still?
well, we were doing Zoom services, and I was still the minister of music for a period of time, and then they kind of dissolved the congregation, and so
Oh man,
the building's on the market, but I'll be staying here until it's sold, and I'm just grateful for every day because it's been such a gift. It's such an amazing space.
Well, how does the room sound like musically when you were performing in there? Is it real? How old is the building? Is it like 100 years old, or is it?
It's only it was built in 1955, so it's not as old as
Still
a lot of the
pretty old.
churches. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. It's made to look like an English countryside church, and the sanctuary sounds as you would imagine a large church to sound, but
Right.
we recorded the record in the basement of the parsonage. And then we had lines running up to the control room, which is in the former dining room space. So it's, it sounds incredible for where we recorded it and how we recorded it.
It sure does.
Yeah.
You mentioned that title, Minister of Music. I think you should have business cards printed up that say that.
I don't know, man. I don't want to claim to be the minister of music outside of this church, man. That's maybe Stevie Wonder's job. But
It reminds me, we've had Billy Gibbons of ZZ Top on this show a million times.
I love ZZ Top, man.
He's a good friend of the radio station. I don't know if you've ever met him.
No.
You're going to fall in love. He's the best dude ever. But anyway, one time we were at South by Southwest, hanging out at some place called, maybe you've heard of Stubbs. They do a lot of shows there.
Yeah.
So we were hanging out and having some barbecue and some drinks. And I said, Billy, do you have a business card? And he whips out his business card, says, Billy Gibbons, guitarist, friend of Eric Clapton.
Very nice.
I'm like, dude, that is the best business card ever. So getting back to you and the church, I don't know if this happened to you growing up as a kid, but I remember going to church, very young, Protestant, it was a Union Congregational Church in Montclair, New Jersey. Really beautiful building and everything. You sort of, when you're a little kid, you're like blown away by stained glass and statues but what really got to me was the music, because when I started to hear this music playing, I asked my mother, what is that? She goes, oh, that's the organist. And I said,
Right.
Well, where is the organist? I can't see him playing. Oh, he's probably in the back somewhere. He doesn't, because the minister does his thing. He wouldn't necessarily be on stage. It would take away from the service or whatever. So then after, the service, I explored the church with my mother. And then we finally found that behind the altar was the pipe organ.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw this pipe organ. It had 4 or 5 keyboards, all the pedals, and then the pipes all around the walls of the church. It was like it was a moment for me, because I was just so into that sound. I felt that I had just, pulled back the curtain on the Wizard of Oz or something. Did that happen to you as a kid as well?
Absolutely. Actually, randomly, I have this photo of me. Your listeners won't be able to see it, but I started playing in the Catholic Church where I was kind of raised when I was like 8 years old, and I'm grateful to have that exposure because it's a totally different animal from the piano. And the Hammond organ is a lot different from the pipe organ, obviously, especially just it's Billy Preston versus Bach. It's 2 completely disparate forms of music, but I had that same sort of awe because it's really the first attempt at a synthesizer, really having the whole orchestra sort of laid out at your fingertips, and there's really nothing like being in that space and having the power of that instrument at your fingertips. It's amazing. So that really got me interested in music, and then having access to the one in the sanctuary here has really helped me grow as a musician in the last few years, become more accomplished with the classical repertoire as well.
Well, what blows me away about some of these, legendary, famous jazz organists like
Jimmy
who am I
Smith,
thinking about?
Jimmy
Jack
McGriff.
McGriff.
Sure.
I wanted to tell you about this. Have you heard of Dr. Lonnie Smith?
Oh, of course.
So he just put out a record, and Iggy
With
Pop,
Iggy, yeah.
that Sunshine Superman. Oh my God, so fantastic. But what amazes me, I see some of these black and white television shows that they did back in the 60s and the 50s. And these jazz organists are playing ridiculous bass lines with their feet and then playing insanity with both their hands on the keyboards.
Yeah, it's wild.
I mean, that's, I don't know. That's, what do you equate that to? Maybe like a pedal steel guitar player, because I don't know what planet those guys are on.
It's its own thing, man. And the guys who can do it well like that are really just completely dedicated to that instrument. I can't play like Joey D or Lonnie Smith. You know, I aspire to that, but you know, those guys are crazy. And then the craziest is when you see someone like Joey DiFrancesco whip out a trumpet and then start comping his own solo on trumpet while playing the bass with his feet. It's like, man, you know, where'd you come from?
Right, another planet, clearly.
Yeah, man, it's cool.
We are with Neal Francis. The latest album, the full latest album is the debut, Changes. There's also Changes EP, which is the demos from that album. And so, Neal, when you finally do go out on tour, will it just be you, the guitar player, the bass player, and the drummer, or will you also have the horns with you?
So right now it's sort of a big
Quartet.
unknown. Yeah. I mean, we're working the songs up. We're working a lot of new material up for the new record as well, as a 4-piece. That's how we were touring for the most part before the pandemic as well. And then, you know, when there's bigger shows or a hometown show, we add personnel, you know, for the most part. And, you know, I think it's important for us as a band to get compelling versions of these songs together with a 4-piece and do like the real, you know, rock and roll version of that set. So when we do add, you know, horn sections, background singer, etc., it really is like an extra treat for us and for the audience.
Big time. And for you guys too on stage. It's
Absolutely.
nice to hear that, you know, that air moving behind you, you know. How many keyboards do you normally take with you on the road?
Well, typically I have a Yamaha CP70, which is like a grand piano with pickups, and then a Hammond A100, and a Leslie, and then a clavinet D6. And for this new record, there's a lot of synthesizers, so I'll be taking probably a Juno 6, Roland Juno 6, and a Korg MS-20, and maybe something else. You know, we're thinking about maybe hiring an extra member of the band to play and sing. You know.
Yeah. I was going to say, do your roadies hate you? I mean,
well,
you know, especially
my roadies are my band, man. You know, like they're saints, all of them.
You know, the Hammond B3 alone, or the Hammonds in general, are just like, they're big old monsters. You know,
it weighs 400 pounds, and then the amp weighs 150 pounds, but. You know, we have a dolly rigged for it, and you get good at learning how to move it, you know?
Safely.
Yeah. And that's the key, man, because some of these, you know, especially when we were first starting to tour in 2019, like, you know, there'd be like a 3/4 stair built in the 1800s, and you're like, okay, the Hammond isn't coming into this because someone's going to get hurt, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I see some tour dates listed on your website. Do you have some new information as of right now? Because I do see Red Rocks, which have you played Red Rocks before?
No, that would be a first, and that's still, I think that's still
wait and see. Like,
yeah, man. I think with all of this, it's like I'm cautiously optimistic, but you know, my agents are very optimistic.
Of course they are.
And I like to see that, you know. Shout out to Phil and Josh, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, I think the economy overall is optimistic, and everybody I know is getting vaccinated, and I'm vaccinated, and I really think that's important, you know, just so everybody can get back to normal, the new normal.
Right.
But more normal.
Well, I hope there's a New York City date coming up on there.
Oh man, me too, man. I think it's definitely in the works.
So we talking the fall, maybe the summer, maybe.
I
22.
Man, definitely 22. 22 is going to be a crazy year. We actually have potential Europe dates on the calendar already. LA, Chicago. It's looking very exciting for 22. Right now it's touch and go as you know, and
with everybody. I mean, I don't care if you're
man.
AC/DC or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just we don't know. Let's book them, and see what happens.
The people got to get out there and dance, man. We got to get everybody in the room, and it's got to be safe.
I'm so ready.
But
hey, listen, that New York City date, you got to bring the horns, man.
Yeah, I know some horn players in New York. Trust me, man.
There's a few here. I think you can, call up the union and
killing horn players in New York.
Get it going.
Yeah, and New York is one of my favorite places for sure.
Where have you played here in New York?
So the first thing we did was at Brooklyn Steel, supporting the Cat Empire. Cool. Actually, no, the first gig we played was at Joe's Pub, and that was like, man, it was like supposed to be an after party for our homies, the Revivalists, and it was like,
So
3 or 4
blowout.
people showed up, and we just kicked ass, and had a great time. And, it's just been getting better every time. We played at, I think that might be like I'm trying to remember, man. It's all melding together.
You got Joe's Pub, and then you immediately jumped to Brooklyn Steel, which is about 2,000 more people.
Yeah, and there were people there, man, because we were supporting a band from Australia that's really popular, Cat Empire.
Yeah,
we did a whole tour of North America with them, and that was like probably 3 months after my first gig with this project.
Wow.
And so it was really like, okay, we're doing this for real.
Yeah.
And this is awesome. And that year we probably did 80 shows, and then this last year we were supposed to have maybe 150 shows at least, and then of course we all know what happened there. But
yeah, well, you mentioned the new music and the new album. How far along are you?
It's done, man. It's in the bag. It's mixed. We're getting it mastered very soon. I've got the sequence, working on the artwork, and it's coming out hopefully in November, but that's not an official statement.
So we might get a single in the early part of the fall, you think?
Yeah, maybe August.
Okay.
Maybe August, yeah. But
and how would you describe it? Is it similar to Changes, or is it a complete left turn?
It's not a complete left turn. I think I like a large variety of music, and some more of those influences. So some more of those influences have been included on this new record, and I think fans of the last record will also dig this record. There's actually no horns on this record,
wow, okay.
Which, there were some places where I heard horn arrangements, but it was not really safe to have a horn section, just because it's like a giant, gun for your
freight train.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, for everything coming out of your mouth. So no horns, but just great playing from the band, and we spent our time on it. We did it all here at home, and it's really something we're all proud of. I'm very excited to share it.
What was your producer's name? Sergio?
Yeah, Sergio Rios was the producer on this record.
Okay.
And he was straight up producing. He wasn't playing guitar. On this one, we have Kellen Boersma, my touring guitarist, on this most recent record. And yeah, man, it came together pretty magically. And there's a lot of crazy stories with that, but I don't have time to get into it, man. We spent at least a month worth of tracking days. So that was quite a luxurious amount of time for us as well.
Yeah, that's not too bad, actually.
Yeah. Really getting there to get vocal takes on tape, really helped me to become a better singer too. So,
well, when you finally come to New York City to promote this new album and, do all the television shows that you're going to do and all that stuff, you got to come by the radio station and, jam for us a little bit. We got some keyboards. They're probably not as good as yours, but we'd love to have you in the studio, man.
Oh, hell yeah, Jonathan. Hell yeah, anytime, man.
Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Again, it's Neal Francis. The album is Changes. There's also Changes, the demos. That's an EP. You can get it all at nealfrancismusic.com. And Neal, until we see you in New York City, stay safe and healthy, and look forward to hearing the new music, man.
Yeah, stay safe, Jonathan. Thank you very much for having me.
This is Out of the Box with your host, Jonathan Clark. Out of the Box, Sunday nights at 9 on Q1043.